Welcome back to the show, and today, my friends, we are going to be breaking down some of the most underhanded and manipulative ways that developers trick you into feeling feelings when playing their otherwise magnificent video games. Now, the emotional blackmail techniques mentioned hereafter range from the mean-spirited but forgivable to the downright evil, and they will inevitably touch on some spoilery subjects, so consider this fair warning for the games appearing on the screen right now. So you can either go away and finish them and then come back later, or not be a total dork and instead stick around to completion. Oh, and be sure to like this video and subscribe if you enjoy the episode, as we are moving ever closer to that 1,000 subscriber goal, at which point I will lead my burgeoning army in a bloody campaign to defeat Konami and return the Metal Gear franchise to the loving bosom of its father Hideo Kojima, thus ushering in a new golden age of video game development. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the 4 techniques that developers use to crawl under our skin and burrow their way into our emotional nerve centers. And let's start off with an emotion that we all hate but are becoming nonetheless more familiar with as the relentless march of time wears us down, and that is guilt. Now, gaming is, at its heart, a hobby that centers around entertainment and joy. I personally enter a digital world to feel good, to escape from the worries of the real, and to escape from emotions such as guilt. However, increasingly developers have decided that in order to make a great game, they need to inflict the guilt status on gamers as much as humanly possible by forcing them to kill things that they would never want to kill in a million years in the real. And of course, I'm talking dogs, and not the dogs from Elden Ring, which are clearly a bunch of JOCK monsters. Them I'd kill 5 ways till Sunday. No, I'm talking about the fluffy good boys from Ghost of Tsushima and the guard dogs from The Last of Us 2. I can only imagine that a powerful alpha developer thought up this strategy with fingers steepled and malice in his eyes before commanding a smaller, weaker developer to go and code it with tears in his. And let me tell you, it freaking works. I am not, as a 30-something-year-old dog-owning adult, emotionally equipped to deal with this scenario. It brings the bad feels, which is why you may notice I have refused to capture any footage of dogs in peril, pixelated or not. And don't get me wrong, I understand that at times 4-legged enemies are a necessity when it comes to creature design, but in certain games it just feels like a cheap and nasty way of eliciting an emotional response. I'll kill a dragon, I'll kill 100 guys, hell, I'll kill a god. But please, for the love of all that is holy, just leave the dogs out of it, you unforgivable monsters. Moving on and sticking with the guilty vibe, let's talk about all those times that developers have put you in a no-win scenario and made you the bad guy, wherein you have to make a split-second high-pressure life or death decision with little to no idea as to how it's going to play out for the rest of the game. Now, the absolute crown prince of evil for this type of shenanigans is of course Until Dawn, the interactive horror title from Supermassive Games. Until Dawn forces you to take control of and empathize with a group of, well, let's be honest, awful teens as they gather to party for a weekend at their friend's secluded and uber-creepy mountaintop cabin. In the first half of the game, you'll get busy uncovering the complex web of relationships that exist between the protagonists, and through the use of QuickTime events and dialogue options, further evolving their story in order to set up the second phase of the game, in which the angsty teens are plunged into a revenge-infused supernatural horror fest, which, depending on your choices as the player, can have a shockingly high fatality rate. Miss a button prompt and bam, you're falling to a graphic and entirely avoidable death. Make the decision to move to the apparent safety of cover instead of staying deadly still, and whoops, you just got disemboweled by a monster, my friend. There are literally hundreds of these choices littered throughout Until Dawn, and they are almost never cut and dry. The options are either bad or terrible, and to make matters worse, you never know when a decision you made a few hours back is going to come back to bite you. You literally hold the godly power of life and death over these unfortunate teens, and that means that when they inevitably get nasty murdered in a plethora of imaginative and unpleasant ways, it's you, dear player, who are the ones who are left holding the guilt bag. And this dirty trick has been used in countless RPGs to date, so drop a comment down below letting me know if you've ever been made to feel like a guilty monster so that we can make a comprehensive list of the offending developers with which to exact retribution. But moving on, another way that game creators try to get under your skin and crank your anxiety levels up to 11 is by pairing you with a companion who immediately triggers the innate protect and nurture instinct buried within us, and then repeatedly putting that friend in mortal danger. Good examples of digital creations that I immediately felt the unstoppable urge to keep safe from harm include the Princess from Ico, Clementine from The Walking Dead, Joel's daughter Sarah, and subsequently Ellie from The Last of Us, and of course Trico from The Last Guardian. And yes, I know Trico was an enormous mythical beast capable of swallowing a man whole, and Ellie has shot more men in the face than I've had hot meals. But that doesn't stop me from having a panic attack every time something looks at them the wrong way. And it's worth pointing out that this technique only works when the character being protected is extremely deep and well realized. For example, you empathize with Ellie as you get to know her. She lays bare her hopes, her fears, and her past, and subsequently by the end of the game, you almost start to think of her like a daughter. And Trico, despite being unable to speak, is a fantastic creation because it behaves so believably like a real animal. It's honestly like having a loyal giant dog by your side that you can't help but bond with. And that brings us to the final point of the day, because throughout the short history of gaming, developers have been watching us as we learn to love the digital characters cavorting on the other side of the screen. They've noticed how we bond with them, and they've figured out that the greatest way to inflict blunt force emotional trauma on their audience is by making them create a bond with a trusty steed, and then after tens of hours of gameplay, murdering them right in front of your eyes. The worst offenders here, in my opinion, happen to be two of the greatest open world games ever made, Ghost of Tsushima and Red Dead Redemption 2. Now near the beginning of Ghost of Tsushima, you pick a horse, you get to name it, and it remains your companion throughout most of the game, and in Red Dead Redemption 2 the emotional stakes are kicked up even higher as you regularly have to feed and groom your horse throughout, and listen to Arthur as he constantly speaks to it as he rambles through the Old West committing a series of lovable and totally understandable crimes. But in both cases, these lovable loyal stallions are traumatically murdered just to add further emotional weight to a plot moment, proving themselves to be little more than pawns in the game of emotional chess being orchestrated by our developer overlords. It's monstrous, and if we don't do anything about it as a community, countless other digital steeds could suffer the same fate. And that's it for today's episode, so be sure to let me know in the comment section below whether you've ever fallen prey to this kind of predatory game development, and be sure to keep it here for all the biggest news, reviews, and reactions from around the video gaming industry.